Co-publisher at Scout Comics, Charles Stickney is a creative visionary when it comes to world building. He has been active in the comic book industry for over 20 years and has worked with companies like Hulu, Sony Pictures, Marvel, and Universal Studios. Charles Stickney is one of the co-creators and writers for the series White Ash in the Game with Scout Comics. Let's get to know more about Charles Stickney.
So, Charlie, I want to get to know you a little bit more. I want to know when did you begin writing and becoming a creator in the comic book realm?
So it's been a long journey for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, that was originally my goal. I went to school in upstate New York, and I was planning to move down to New York City. I was going to become a writer, an inker with Marvel Comics. I think it was the summer of my sophomore year, between my sophomore and my junior year, I interned at the Marvel offices.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was all career tracked to be,
Mm-hmm.
a comic book person.
Yeah.
And I had I'm trying to think of the terminology, a cartoon in the newspaper back when they used to do those
Mm.
print things.
Yeah.
For the school paper I used to do.
What's that?
A
Oh,
paper? Yeah,
I'm kidding.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
kidding.
exactly. Yes. Like you go way back.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I was all tracked for that, but I was also a film major in college too.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was getting ready to graduate, I got an offer from an alumni out in Los Angeles to come, work for her in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And she had this company that worked with the Cannes Film Festival. So it was like, if you come out here, I'll have a job for you.
Mm-hmm.
You will get to go to France every year and get to know people in the film industry. So I put the comic book thing aside for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
and then ended up, out here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a longer detour than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It's great, but I worked in film and animation for a long time.
Yeah.
And some television. There's a lot of stuff with the entertainment industry where you develop things, they pay you to work on things, but they never get made, which is the exact opposite of the comic book industry, where you can just go and make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so around 2016, 2017, I was just thinking about a lot of the scripts that I was writing, and I thought, for some of these, maybe the best way to get the vision that I want out to people would be to do them as a comic book.
Yeah.
And so I kind of dived back into comics after a longer, like I said, than I anticipated hiatus, and started doing White Ash, and that's what eventually brought me to Scout, and that was kind of my what sucked me back in, and I've just been loving every minute of it.
I love how you talked about how you kind of repurposed some old ideas or old stories that you had, and you're like, I could turn these into comics. Was White Ash one of those series?
Well, I mean, like, for me, I think, I don't know if I would use the term repurpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's more important to think, what's the best way to get across this vision?
Mm-hmm.
And I had reached a point in about 2016 where the entertainment industry was shifting so much. It was getting harder and harder to do a pitch for something. They didn't want to look at scripts anymore. Unless you were one of like 6 or 7 showrunners for TV shows. Everybody wanted to do something that was based on established property. And I said, this is crazy. Why don't I just make something I love? And, I can also develop it as a TV series if someone's interested, but at least I can make it the right way once. And so then, so I started doing that with White Ash. And so for me, with my background, whenever I'm creating a show, I'm kind of doing it as multiple things at once. So be like, okay, so here's the comic book series, which I can think of as 80 issues, 60 issues, but that's also 5 seasons of a TV show.
Yeah.
And so I map all that out. I mean, that's the kind of writer I am. I'm always thinking long-term, where's the story going? And what are the different seasons? What are the different arcs that you're going to be playing with? And so it's nice because it gives me the flexibility. So if someone was interested in something as a TV show, I'd say, okay, let me tell you where season 1 ends, season 2 ends, season 3 ends. It also helps me for the comic book because I can see things in issue 1 that aren't going to pay off till, say, issue 25.
Yeah, I love that perspective, because I want to dive into what you have in your bio, and you say that you emphasize the creator first approach designed to empower writers and artists to help them bring their vision to the marketplace. Can you explain more about that?
Well, I think so. There's a lot of different independent comic book companies out there. And I think one of the reasons why over the last 6 months that Scout has been growing rapidly is because our creators, you know, and when I say our creators, I don't mean in the possessive sense, as in as we are a team of creators, you know, feels that as a collective, you know, it's a good group of people. And so we're all trying to push each other. And I come from the Kickstarter space. I mean, that's where I originally started looking to build comics. And why Kickstarter works is because it's a collective of creators who have each other's backs and are trying to, you know, create something because they don't have a giant publisher behind them, right? So they have to network. And so I thought, you know, when I stepped in as publisher with David at Scout, that being able to do that with creators at Scout, we could bring some of that same energy to the company and help grow the company, and by extension, the brands of the creators. So, you know, when we're not just promoting a series, you know, it's not just Metal Shark Bro, it's Kevin Cuff and Bob Franz and Walter Ostile. You know, it's and Chad Pennington on letters. You know, it's like we want all of them to have a great career, and you know, I'd love them to do all their books at Scout, but if they have a better offer, which they can, you know, grow their own brand someplace else, that's great, because I want what's best for them. But you know, when we promote the books, we're trying to promote the creators too, and by extension, you know, the better their brands grow, you know, together as the company, we can just quickly make a mark on the marketplace. And I think creators are being attracted to that because they're hearing from their fellow creators how much they're enjoying working with us. And I think the publishing industry is hard, and you know, you just want someone who's going to be upfront with you. And the first thing I'll say to a creator is like, ask me a question, and you know, I'll be direct with you. I'll tell you about how much money that you can make working with Scout. You know, I'll take, like, I'm a creator. I have books here too. You know, this is what we do. You know, these are the ways we're going to market you. These are the ways that we're going to try to make your book succeed. And we, you know, value input from creators. So it's a team thing. I mean, and that was one of the things that made me attracted to Scout, is I had a meeting with James Hake about a year and a half ago, and he said, you know, we're looking for people who want to be on our team. And so we're just really trying to emphasize that approach, that together we are a team, we are a collective, and that we can do better things together than we can if we're just trying to say, hey, here's the great new title from Scout. You'll like this one. Oh, you'll like this one. No, these are the great creators that are working with Scout and working together.
I think that approach is approach of the future. The way things are going, collaboration is huge, especially like if you look at like things like the entertainment industry as a whole. They're focused on like it's not the song that artists are making, it's the fact that these two artists are collaborating together. And I think the reason why comic book writers are gravitated to what Scout's creating is because you guys are focused on them, like, because they have to focus on the property. And like I feel as though in history and pop culture, it was the property first, not the creator. The creator can change like that if we don't like you. If we're tired of you, we'll just hire other people to write it for you. But like, if you focus on the creator and take care of the creator, that in itself, I think, is a positive. That's really inspiring that you guys are focusing on that. When I was younger, I used to watch a series in history class called Horrible Histories. And it's definitely a classic. Only like a couple of my teachers were into it. Most of them were not, but like the ones that were, I remember it. How did you come up with the series, and like what was your process of making it?
So I'm so excited. Like, you mean the animated series? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So when I was first getting started, I was working at this company called Mike Young Productions, and I was very young at the time, and I had just gotten out of college. I had met someone. I was also still doing some acting. Met someone from an acting class. They hired me as their assistant. And basically, Mike, who was the owner of the company, his son was looking to get into directing. Yeah. And so he established this small little wing of the company where he stuck his son, and then he stuck me with his son because I had a little bit more structure coming from a film school background to kind of do this one-off cartoon about an anti-smoking campaign. So we were working on that. And it was basically him trying to find work for us to do where we wouldn't get into too much trouble. In the meantime, the main studio had this big meeting with Scholastic, and they landed Clifford the Big Red Dog, right?
Mhm.
And so we, so they were walking. The executives from Scholastic were coming through, and they're like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we're doing this. We have this idea for a show about great explorers." And they said, that's interesting, because we have this book series that we've been trying to crack for a long time, and we can't find anyone to do it.
Mhm.
And so it's because it's based on a series of books by Terry Deary.
Mhm.
And they gave us one of the books and said, "Can you guys come up with something for this?"
Mhm.
And yes, so we just basically loved the illustrations in the book. We developed a hybrid style of animation, which at the time, it was still, most of the things were done traditionally. And
Mhm.
even then, like, South Park was just
Yes.
breaking the theme.
Mhm.
So like there hadn't been a lot of, of that
Mhm.
limited animation.
Mhm.
And South Park was all computer.
Yeah.
What we ended up doing for Horrible Histories was we hired 8 people straight out of art school.
Mhm.
The entire team that was making was all in-house. It was done in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And there was like nothing done overseas. And a bunch of kids who were all like 22 to 24, run by a guy who was 26 at the time.
Mhm.
Um, we had them like drawing traditional drawings, and then we move it in the computers.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it was just like, how can we, and like we were drawing on the things that we loved as kids, like Sherman and Peabody, Bill and
Mhm.
Ted, like, and trying to like put those things into a time travel show,
Mhm.
and also make it irreverent enough to match the book.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably why some of your teachers didn't love it, because it was so on the edge of being inappropriate.
Mhm.
We had trouble finding the right audience for it. And
Mhm.
because we were also battling with Scholastic, who's very rigid in terms of what they want.
Yeah.
So we were actually doing the same kind of thing that South Park was doing, where we would fill our rough draft cuts for Scholastic with stuff we knew we'd never get through. So there's
Mhm.
this one episode called The Perilous Plagues,
Mhm.
where our goal was, we told the animators, we want at least 5 dead bodies in every single shot. And so we show that to
Mhm.
Scholastic, and Scholastic is horrified, because at the end of the day, we have a history professor in high school and one in college who's vetting everything. And they're all
Mhm.
like, "Oh yeah, it's accurate, it's accurate." And so
Yeah.
Scholastic's like, "Would you mind if you only had 1 dead body per shot?"
Mhm.
So we gave them to something to roll back from. So, but it was
Mhm.
really kind of great to work with them. And like, so we were trying to push the bounds of what you could do. And at
Mhm.
that time, there was no Cartoon Network, no Adult Swim. It
Mhm.
was it was just the beginnings, and there was no internet for streaming. So it was either
Yeah.
PBS, and like it. I'm glad. I'm really happy to hear that you got to see it,
Mhm.
because here in the United States it wasn't aired so much, but in
Yeah.
France and in England it was a huge hit.
Mhm.
Uh, there was even some fan fiction that I found online once about some
Yeah.
of the characters from it. So
Well, because I remember while I was doing my research for the interview, I looked it up. I'm like, I remember that. Like, it sounds familiar. Then I watched it. I'm like, I remember this,
yeah,
but only had a couple teachers that played it. A lot of them just wouldn't do it,
yeah.
and they played like the really boring old videos with an old guy narrating.
Mhm.
But this one I remember vividly just because it was so much fun. And I was like, yeah.
We
And,
that was our goal, to try to make it fun. I
mhm.
actually did voices for a couple of the characters, and there's a caricature of me that appears in like 6 episodes.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was such a fun series. It was
Mhm.
one, like, when you're in, I feel like throughout the course of your life, you get several flashpoint moments where
Mhm.
you're doing something that you love.
Mhm.
And for me, I've had like 3 or 4 of those in my career. And like
Mhm.
that 2.5 years where it was basically just us, a bunch of kids in a candy store making cartoons, was one of the
Mhm.
best things I've ever done.
Yeah.
Uh, and now at Scout, I'm
Yeah.
getting to work with amazing creators again. So this would be definitely another high point in terms of what I do.
Mhm. And when it comes to your creative mindset, when you are creating like a new world or a new story, what inspirations do you draw from?
Well, I think, look, I think sometimes we don't even know the
Mhm.
inspirations we draw from. It's the stuff that you read as a kid, the movies that you were watched, that then go through the filter of your perception over years and years of your life.
Mhm.
Um, or like in the case of, say, White Ash. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've read any White Ash, but the quick log line on that is Romeo and Juliet meets Lord of the Rings in rural Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
because the core relationship was something that I saw very briefly, as a concept in a movie, and I was like, oh, I feel like there's so much more to that relationship. I feel like that should be a series, but we haven't seen that series. Why haven't we seen like? And I think that's when you work in the entertainment industry long enough. What you start to learn is the ideas people gravitate to the most are the ones that are both familiar but they've never seen before. So anytime you
Yes.
stumble across something that you feel like wasn't this a series? Wasn't this a TV show? Wasn't this a comic book? And then you realize, no, it hasn't been. Those are the ideas that it will resonate with people.
Mhm.
So a lot of my ideas come from concepts, and then it's about building the universe. And then once I built the universe and the backstory, then it's about finding the best characters specifically to play in that universe.
Mhm.
So I go through a lot of planning and just building out outlines and character
Mhm.
profiles even before I start writing.
Mhm. See, I know because David's process, he usually is telling the stories of the characters first, and they help guide him through the world. I remember him describing that to me, and so your style is a little bit different. What was your inspiration behind White Ash? So that we're talking about it. As you said, it's like Romeo and Juliet, Lord of the Rings meets
Yeah, yeah.
Pennsylvania.
Like without getting too specifically into it. Like I
Mhm.
said, I saw like the key relationship that is the foundation for the Romeo and Juliet aspect of White Ash.
Mhm.
I saw that somewhere and I said, there's got to be something that explores that more. I feel
Mhm.
like that could be a comic book or a TV series, especially set in the real world.
Mhm.
Because that's the big hook that I think one of the things that makes White Ash work. I mean, I love stories that are set in our universe where there's a character who spent their whole life thinking the world is this way, and then realizes there's so much more.
Mhm.
And I think it's also because I come from a very small town.
Yeah.
Uh, we had like 4,000-5,000 people in the town, and you go through life feeling like there's got to be something more. And then I moved to Los Angeles, which is one of the most cosmopolitan places anywhere, and it didn't feel like there was that much more, and so like that
Mhm.
magical thing that you're missing that makes life feel like it was worth it. That's kind of what I try to put in my stories, like that moment where everything clicks, where the character's like, oh, this is what life's really about.
Mhm.
So like that was like the baseline, you know, for me, that it was like that relationship, there should be a story based on it. Let's set it in the real world so it's grounded. Um,
Mhm.
because I think, there's a lot of wild out there fantasy. And if you're going to build this big epic fantasy universe, but you want people to resonate with it, um, you know, you don't have a lot of time to do that unless it's set in a way that's accessible. So for me, I always try to make my big universes accessible by setting them somewhere or grounding them in characters that people understand.
Mhm.
And then as those characters are exposed to the bigger and bigger world, you're brought in with them.
Mhm.
And so like that's your entree point. So you don't feel like you're overwhelmed or you're like, oh, this is crazy fantasy, I don't understand it.
Mhm.
No, this is a guy from a coal mining town. He comes from a small town. He hates
Mhm.
the job his dad has. That I understand. I don't want to do what my parents did. I want to do something else, have my own destiny. And then, off of that, you can build an epic. Like with White Ash, I have a timeline that goes back 3,000 years.
Mhm.
I
Wow.
know where the characters are going. There's all these different events. I'm doing a White Ash prequel spin-off series right now,
Oh,
which is
fun.
going to help fill in some of those gaps.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm playing with all different aspects of the story at once.
Mhm.
Um, but it's got to be, you as the reader need to feel like you are not just overwhelmed by, fancy words and like, we are going to the land of Astoria
Mhm.
where, you find the magic sword. And like, I just feel like it's too easy for fantasy to become ridiculous.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
And I do like that how you said it's too easy for fantasy to become ridiculous. On that point, it sometimes it's just so far fetched out there that like I want to now learn about this. But like when you're able to really put yourself in the story somehow, some way, though there's elements that are unrealistic, you're able to still put yourself in a story grounded in a place that we are from, like a small coal town in Pennsylvania. Do you ever feel like you're connected to any of the characters that you're writing, or are they kind of like are they sometimes like foreign people to you that you are still discovering?
Interesting. Like, I think for me, the writing process is when I'm writing, uh, I feel very connected to everything that I'm doing. You know, like you're channeling the characters. Then sometimes when I go back and I read my writing, it's like I'm reading something that someone else wrote. So I think it's like when you get into that zone, at least for me, you know, I am pulling something from inside and the characters are speaking through me to the point when I go back to reread it, I don't remember writing most of it. And like, that's when I know I'm writing something good, when I'm not just, you know, mentally thinking, it just sort of comes forth.
Is there so you talked about you're making a prequel series for White Ash. Is that what you're currently working on now? What else are you currently working on?
So I'm working on a couple of different things. We're working on the prequel series for White Ash. White Ash itself is, you know, like Connor is also working on, you know, the next arc of White Ash. I mean, we'll probably, you know, all things going well, we'll probably do about 60 issues through Scout of White Ash.
Yeah.
That's where it's planned out. So like, there's a lot to do there. I've got, you know, the prequel series. I'd like to do a prequel series or prequel or a spin-off series every couple of years to help grow, you know, tell some of those other stories. I have another series called The Game, which is more of a sci-fi series that I'm writing with Connor as well. I have, let's see, so I'd say like those are the biggest things. And then right now, honestly, like trying to make sure Scout's running smoothly is taking a lot of time. So like building those two universes. That said, if I have time, I have another series in the works, which is about, it's kind of a cross between like a scam university like Trump University and a school like Hogwarts. So it's like a knockoff Hogwarts, like for kids who get into that one, they get into this, they know, and they don't realize it's kind of a scam university. There's like this low rent Hogwarts that's half out of like half of the place is like this retirement community, and half is like because they're renting out the campuses, and so like the kids, you know, think that they've been chosen. Like it opens with this great scene where like this guy is like doubting his life, and then this, you know, scroll, this pigeon lands and drops him the skull, and he's like, "You've been chosen. You're a wizard. You're going to go to Trent University." And then we follow the pigeon back, and there are these two guys in a van who are sending out hundreds of pigeons to try to see how many people they can get to their scam university.
Yes,
so like
genius.
That's another series I have in the works. When I have a little time, I would like to do that one. So yeah, and something I have different things that when I have time, I have some more grounded, darker stuff. There's a murder mystery that's set at a college campus that also has like a call girl ring that's involved. One of the professors is running that, which is like it's almost like Secret Diary of a Call Girl meets How I Get Away with Murder kind of thing. It's a very different tonal thing, but that's one of those things where I would bring on a co-writer because I think depending on the type of story that you're telling, you want to be careful how you're telling that story. So I would probably, I work with a woman on that to make sure we were towing the right line with that kind of material. I'm working on with another company on a series called The Adept, which is a Kung Fu series. The first issue of that was on Kickstarter. I think they're going to be doing more on Kickstarter, but they're building a whole interconnected Kung Fu universe, and I've been helping them flesh that out as well. So
we'll talk about the story of with the call girl meets How to Get Away with Murder. You talked about how you have a co-writer who is a female, and I feel like that's like is that new that people are making sure to tell the story authentically? They are making sure they're getting somebody who could, of that community, of that group, involved in the writing process. Because I feel like Hollywood at many times, or in the entertainment industry as a whole, they miss the mark when telling a story about a young African-American teenager in the slums, or they miss the mark on telling a story about Indian Native Americans because they themselves were just not, they were not the people of that community.
I think people are becoming more sensitive to these things, or at least I hope they are. I know for me personally, it's not just also about being authentic. It's about doing it well, right? And I know the kind of things that I can tell. I can tell a fantastic story. I can create some good characters, but you know, I want to make sure that my own personal perspective, you know, is broad enough, and to make my perspective broad enough, sometimes I need to bring in other voices to tell a story the right way. And so like the White Ash prequel series is called Glarian, which is about one of the main character's mother. And I like to describe her as like, imagine Red Sonja as an elf. And so you know, it's like it's the kind of story that, I mean, that I wanted to make sure that, you know, that I had a female artist that I was working with on it, to make sure any scenes that were touching on sexuality or things would be from a female POV when it was drawn, right? And Melissa White is my editor on the book, who's also helping me with, you know, with scenes and making sure the female voices are strong enough. So again, you want to buttress yourself with the voices that can make what you're doing stronger. So it's not just about, I mean, like, you want to represent all perspectives, but I think it's also, you know, important to know where you are good and where you can get better, and making sure that you have the right people that you're working with that are, you know, are augmenting what you do.
For somebody who is inspired to create comics or to create stories that they are wanting to tell, what advice do you have for them if it's like their very first time writing a series, writing anything?
Well, I guess it comes down to what your education is, right? You know, what do you know about writing? What do you know about storytelling? Like, I'll speak from the perspective of speaking to writers, because I think, you know, it's slightly different advice if you're giving it to an artist. So I'd say, if you don't have any instruction in writing, get some. You know, there's wonderful tutorials online. There's great books you can read, and start understanding the basics of what makes a good story. You know, reading comics is great, but also reading books, analyzing TV shows, breaking down your favorite movies to see why they work, where are the beats happening, you know, and get yourself an understanding of, you know, of storytelling. You know, assuming you have an understanding of storytelling, if you're a writer and you know, you think you're a good writer and you're looking for a way to break into the comic industry or to make comics, you know, I think right now we're in a golden age of independent comics in terms of making content. In that, like, you know, there's a lot of anthologies that you can be a part of. The Kickstarter has made it possible for brand new creators to get their work published, to mass produced. The fact that you can print cheaply and you can draw digitally, the fact that you can find artists from all around the world. But, you know, going back to like practical things that you can do, the first thing, you know, is you need to write a script. If you don't know how to write a script, there are books that you can, Brian Michael Bendis has a book, I think his is either called Words to Pictures, but like there are several books that you can look into to kind of look what you need for the comic script. I would focus on writing shorts first, try to get into some anthologies, find a, you know, an artist who is looking to draw a couple of comics, and, you know, maybe he or she wants to practice, or they want to practice on, you know, on what you've written, because they've never written from a writer's script before. You can find people who are looking to do that for experience. You know, once you get past that level, you're going to need to find a way to pay, you know, an artist, because it takes a lot of time to draw a comic strip. You know, draw one yourself. If you ever want to get a sense of how long it's on page, you know, it's
I can't.
even like a bad version of it, right? You know,
Yeah.
it takes you a long time. And so, you know, there's such a time commitment. You need to find ways to pay an artist that you're going to work with. That's again, where Kickstarter is a great place to go, you know, to raise some funds to do a small printing of a comic series. But yeah, I mean, I just think that we're in a really good time, you know, on Twitter, meet people on Twitter. You know, people are always happy to give advice. You know, people aren't, in fact, people give too much advice, but like,
Yes.
but so find the advice you need, find the information that you specifically need. I think that's always the best thing when you're looking for advice. Know what you need, know you're going to get too much, and try to take that one nugget that you're actually looking for from the collective that's going to spit out 100 different takes at you. But I think there's a lot of contacts and people that you can meet on Twitter, on Instagram, so you can get to know artists. If we ever have conventions again, you can go up and talk to people in Artists Alley. Like all these ways, like you can find people. Connor, who I work with on White Ash, I actually found through an internet post. I posted in a couple of places and had, God, I don't know, 100, 200 artists who were looking for a job. And then for me, it was about weeding through all the applications to find the 6 or so best of that group. So.
Yeah, Charlie, I just want to say thank you so much for this interview. It means so much to me. Learned so much. One, about comic creating, two, about your past, horrible histories, how that all came together. It's been awesome. Thank you so much. Don't forget, guys, follow Scout Comics everywhere. They have some amazing things coming out. White Ash, as well as a prequel series that he's working on. There's so many things out there, so please give Scout Comics a follow. Thank you, Charlie, so much for your interview. It means a lot.
Oh, thank you. It was really great being on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.